Well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you today. I will talk a little bit about ResearchSpace as Rob said, but I really want to sort of tackle this question of linked data, which I think has been around for some time now, and it hasn't really established itself in terms of its use with non-technical users. And it's been used a lot by computer scientists and technologists. And ResearchSpace is a completely native linked data semantic web application. But I think it comes from a slightly different tradition. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So ResearchSpace is funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation. And it's been a project for some time, and it's been a research project as much as it has been recently a project about producing a production system that people use, and now we have got people using it. It has some of the similar things that Dennis was talking about, so the ability to visually create semantic databases. I prefer to call them semantic databases rather than linked databases. Linked data is a very technical term for a type of metadata, and we tend to not even talk to people about linked data at all. We tend to talk to them about how a graph system can help with their work. So we talk in terms of knowledge maps, and we talk in terms of knowledge patterns, but we don't tend to do what has happened in this seminar, describe the details of linked data, unless people really want to know that detail. And I think one of the issues that has happened is that people have been quite put off by some of the technical aspects of linked data. But anyway, ResearchSpace has contextual search systems. It has CDOC CRM annotation systems that use IIIF. It has something we call semantic narratives that allow you to embed your data into narratives, so the narrative becomes a database. It has clipboards and ways of organizing your information and so on. But as I said, I wanted to really address this idea of why linked data for conservation. And really, I think ResearchSpace is part of a critical movement that addresses cultural and art documentation in terms of its relationship or interface to society, past, present, and future. In conservation, the traditional detached and neutral tradition is also now being challenged, not just in terms of applying sympathetic conservation methods, but issues of why and how we choose what we conserve. More conservators are involved in significance and relevance issues and require a more integrated approach with other disciplines and be part of a wider conversation that involves the conservation of changing knowledge about things. New technologies come along, but old methods, old standards, and old attitudes are hardwired and can be perpetuated by new technologies like linked data. There's a radio program at the moment. It's hosted by someone called James Bridle, and he talks about some of the biases in existing systems that have been transferred over to new technology. So, for example, he was talking this week about Amazon's application, an artificial intelligence application, which tried to do away with interviews for applicants. And what it did was it tried to learn how to select the right applicants for technical jobs within Amazon. And it took old data, old HR data, and what they found was it started employing men instead of women, because that data historically showed them that men were better at doing computer work than women, and they had to scrap the system altogether. Now, those biases that we have in legacy data are not just about diversity and sexism, racism, but they're also got corporate and instrumentation biases within them. And this is something that we've really got to think hard about when we're implementing these graph systems. So we've had 12 years of linked data. Linked data has been unsuccessful, I think, in providing general users and researchers with the necessary elements for sustainability in a distributed cultural heritage and humanities environment, and often creates new types of silo. often between silos, that barrier between the disciplines. It's time to review not just the technology, but the approach that knowledge workers, researchers, and institutions apply to digital network environments to effectively support their dynamic, not static, and complex activities. So why linked data for conservators? This is not the right question and implies a technically led approach that is inappropriate for moving progressive knowledge methods into a digital environment. It's time to review not just the technology, but the approach that knowledge workers, researchers, and institutions apply to network environments to effectively support their dynamic. Oh, sorry, I've done that slide again. The knowledge associated with the existence of things in relation to changing contexts and processes over time is in contrast to the detached essence used in traditional documentation systems and standards. And this difference is increasingly important to conservation issues. Our current object-focused attention prevents a progressive approach to participatory knowledge generation, exchange, and development, originally envisaged by a fluid and communication-based internet. Current digital abstractions, categorizations, and organizations of data of information is out of step with the analytical abstractions that experts require. Many humanists are worried that these new open world systems will create more work, but deliver disproportionate benefits and hold back progressive disciplinary development. They're bound and limited to instrumentation governed by outmoded institutional conventions, both technical and documentary. These conventions are linked to objectives of administrative efficiency, scale, and the object-focused position. While having some utility, the efficiency is illusory because of the limitations and bias of the resulting data. Linked data can effectively carry these existing issues into open world networks without solving them, and can even magnify them. In working with expert information, including conservation information, its development within a computer system, the design and specifications of a data system should be bound to analytical concerns as part of true digital knowledge working. This analytical focus means that subject experts should be directly involved with and be the authors of data, its design, and how it's expressed, which is necessarily an ongoing and changing process. Linked data is associated with the ability to publish distributed data that can be linked over the web. But this does not confront the issue of the relationship between the expert and the system, and the authoring of data directly related to an analytical investigation instead of simply providing a useful but ancillary reference. Linked data itself does not resolve the difference between and the progression from a network of published essential facts to a participatory network of historically contextual knowledge, which directly addresses research theory, methods, thinking, and argumentation. This means that linked data fails to provide a sustainability model by failing to address the difference between a participatory internet knowledge system and a closed institutional system from which much of the data originates. Closed in this sense doesn't simply mean physically closed, but closed in its design and form. The idea that simply opening up data which has been designed for closed institutional processes will somehow be transformed into a hugely valuable knowledge when released into an open and linked, is flawed without further intervention. The design imperatives are different. In understanding this problem, some problems, including ones involving conservation care, are starting to look beyond these limitations, leading to a re-evaluation of existing forms of conservation documentation. For example, reshaping the collectible at Tate, funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation and directed by Tate's Head of Collection Care Research, Pip Lawrenson, looks into the network of processes and relationships hidden from institutional documentation. Their focus on contemporary art is equally applicable to historical art and culture, and whether they use linked data or some other technology is a secondary concern, but will be influenced by the extent to which it can support these new perspectives. ResearchSpace represents a change in the way that research systems are designed. It confronts the issue of subject-object dualism, explicit in raw linked data, something that is embedded into computer systems as common sense, but which limits its potential to present more complex interrelations. The second is to allow the researcher to transform what computer models and ontologies describe as distinct entities into processes that closely reflect reality and change. In other words, the solution requires human curation and the assertion of subject expert knowledge into data systems design itself. When linked data offers some functional benefits in terms of linking, while linked data offers some functional benefits in terms of linking distributed data, its design is still determined even when users are consulted by a top-down and technically driven worldview. In order for linked data to be useful beyond linking supposedly essential facts, applications need to be defined and used bottom-up. They must address and adequately express wider interrelated concepts and therefore be authored directly by subject experts as required, and address daily and long-term questions and thinking. It must help facilitate an ongoing collaborative and participatory human conversation that can be processed effectively by computers through a semantic framework. ResearchSpace is designed to allow subject experts to design their own conversations. Hi, so that's the end of my presentation, but if someone wants to know more about the details of ResearchSpace, and obviously I'm available, and the ResearchSpace team is available here at the British Museum, and my details are on the slides. But as I say, I think for this first workshop, this first webinar, I think some of these issues needed to be put up there for subsequent discussion, and I hope that's been helpful. Thank you.